You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Coconut, 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 coconut.
I'd wipe the floor with him. Love good news. Love good news. I just love good news.
You can't do it. I can't. You are stressing me, Paris. I can't do it. I'm done. I'm done.
Hello all, bonjour, wherever you are. Welcome to the Critical Corner, the digital sanctuary for critical thought and discourse, news, and pop culture. My name is Eric, or the Eric Lewis if you're familiar. If you are new here, we are so happy to have you. And if you're an OG, what's up, girl? What's happening? As always, really quickly before we get into the nitty-gritty, some ground rules. Number one, I'm learning, you're learning, we in this together. So let's talk like it. And number two, I want this to be an open forum for discussion. There is room for disagreement, not disrespect. So let's keep it cute so nobody gets to get stuff. Okay? Tant pis. S'il vous plaît. I don't want to do the back and forth. Please. Keep that. I want to preface this video by saying I am not here to scare you. I am not here to further add to any cognitive dissonance you might be already experiencing as a result of the heightened emotions this election season. My purpose in making this video is to affirm your subconscious, provide you with a thematic overview, and remind you of how we got here, why we're so anxiety ridden, what are some mistakes that we're making currently that we can course correct. My intention here is to assist in raising consciousness in any way that I can. I understand the fear, I understand the anxiety, I hear you. This video is not an attack, neither is it an endorsement. I understand what is at stake. All that I am asking and requiring from you as a viewer is to watch this all the way through from beginning and end and engage in good faith. Okay, now go get you a snack and come back. Thank you.
Also, just to give you guys a heads up, several times throughout this video, I accidentally mispronounced Kamala's name. Her name is pronounced Kamala, not Kamala, which is what I've been calling her for the past 4 years uncorrected. I actually catch myself halfway through this video, but I still end up mispronouncing on occasion because I haven't fully gotten used to enunciating her name in that way. So I sincerely apologize in advance. I promise I'm not trying to be disrespectful or rude. Just bear with me.
In recent years, we've seen the rise of an intense, almost obsessive adoration for political figures that mirrors the behaviors we typically see reserved for celebrities. This phenomenon has reshaped the way we interact with politics, especially in the digital age. From the fervent support for Donald Trump's MAGA movement to the memification and standing surrounding Kamala Harris, political discourse has taken on an entirely new dimension. The rise of Standom culture in politics is one of the most fascinating psychological phenomena of our time. During the Trump era, we saw this behavior emerge with full force, driven by a fervent base of supporters who treated him less like a traditional politician and more like a cult figure. The MAGA movement became not just a political campaign, but a movement with supporters of Donald Trump displaying a kind of unwavering loyalty that bordered Jonestown-level devotion and obsession. We've caught this happening on the other side of the political aisle with Barack Obama, Bernie Bros. Oh my God. Do y'all remember Obama Girl?
'Cause I got a crush on Obama.
I definitely wasn't all the way there for Obama's election campaign or his first term, to be quite honest, but one thing I do remember from that period was Obama Girl. In the case of Obama, the love and adoration for Obama came at a time when the digital landscape was still evolving. He was a respected politician, a skilled orator who brought hope during a period of economic decline. The people's admiration for him materialized in a more traditional, tangible form. China sets, t-shirts, photo clippings, and a family album. It was cultural reverence. The energy around this man was electric. A much, much different time. One in which many on Twitter have shared was the last time they were ever invested in American politics. These attitudes of political idolization, the fealty, have always been around. But the digitized era we're currently living in has made the social response phenomena we're witnessing around Kamala Harris much more palpable, and for some, inescapable. As of the very moment I'm recording this, a brief scroll through TikTok will have you lost in an algorithmic black hole of coconut this, coconut that. You exist in a context. Enough! Enough! As of current, Kamala Harris's rise in popular culture has been driven by something unique: the intersection of politics and internet culture. Today we're seeing the stanification of political figures like Kamala Harris being propelled to popular culture by memification and social media campaigns. Where Trump's base often drew from a fringe cult-like following, Harris's popularity has been propped up by mainstream popular culture. Memes, viral moments, and a constant presence online have not just turned her into a political figure, but a cultural one. A political celebrity. But what happens when this phenomenon shifts from the world of pop culture into the political arena? What happens when this stanification meets the realities of political critique? Recent discourse around Kamala has only intensified as she stepped into the spotlight following President Biden's decision to step down. With the announcement that she'd be running for president in place of Biden, Kamala was quickly thrust into the center of global politics. In response, folk have taken to the internet to share valid and critical concerns around her record as a prosecutor, concerns from disabled folk who didn't take a liking to her truancy policies, the current administration's role in the genocide taking place in Gaza, the picture she recently took standing next to that freak. And in response to these valid critiques of Harris, there has been this collective response from a segment of the liberal base steeped in this vitriolic America First nationalistic rhetoric, an intense shaming of dissenters, immediate shaming and deflection of criticism, reactions that are eerily reminiscent of stan culture. The branding of Kamala Harris online, the rise of her stans known as Kai since her bid for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2020 has taken on a life of its own. Her supporters have embraced the tactics that are often employed by fan bases for pop stars, where any negative commentary is met with swift and sometimes vicious backlash. This reaction is not just about political allegiance. It's about how Kamala is being branded and pushed online through popular culture channels. She's not just a politician, she's a pop culture phenomenon, and her stans are going to treat her as such.
I'd also like to state for the record, in the process of putting this video together, I totally get the appeal, the fantasy, the symbolic representation of Kamala. Every video I've seen thus far, she's smiling, relatable, joyous, kikiing. Women love her. The gays love her. Her laugh is infectious. And for most folk who are loosely engaged with politics, who aren't that tapped into the state of the world, the state of the people outside of our borders, she's more than enough.
And it is for that reason why I set out to make this video in the first place, to get folk to look beyond the trees and recognize the PR strategies at play, what is being fed to you, what is being campaigned to you, and how can you move forward throughout the remainder of this electoral season, making informed decisions that aren't compromised by representational politics and relatability and memification and stanification. Do you understand what I'm saying? In this video, we dive into the complex phenomena of standing and how it's traversed the pop cultural landscape and manifested itself increasingly in internet political discourse. So what exactly is standing, Standom? In an article written by award-winning news, culture, and entertainment journalist Derek Cottingham, she writes, Stan, a word that combines stalker and fan, entered pop culture's lexicon in 2000 thanks to rapper Eminem's song Stan. The track and video portrayed a young man named Stan dangerously obsessed with Eminem. It is a cult-like adoration for a public figure fueled by social media and an insatiable need for a connection. Standom is not just about admiration. It's about forming parasocial relationships, one-sided emotional connections where stans feel this intense bond and connections to the figures they idolize, even though this relationship is entirely mediated through screens. This phenomena, parasocial relationships, isn't entirely new. In 1956, social scientists Donald Horton and R. Richard Hull coined the term parasocial relationships to describe the way media users form these social relationships with media figures. In the digital age, this behavior is amplified by social media platforms where networks are formed amongst stans, and the lines between public figures and their fans blur. If you've been on the internet long enough, then you're probably familiar with today's most prominent standoms, right? You have the BTS's ARMY, Swifties, the Beehive, and the most volatile, Barbz. These groups represent more than just fan bases. They are highly organized, passionate communities that develop and curate around a shared adoration for their fave idols, celebrities, musicians. But what about these fan bases makes them so sinister? Let's briefly run through some notable cases that illustrate just how unhinged these internet bandits can get. Case number one, During a one-sided feud between Nicki Minaj and Meg Thee Stallion, the Barbz went as far as to locate the gravesite where Megan Thee Stallion's mother was buried, forcing the cemetery to increase the presence of security personnel at the location. Case number 2. In October of 2023, BTS member Kim Taeyong, is that how you say it? Child, please don't burn me at the stake. I'm trying my best here. BTS member Kim Taeyong arrived at his apartment and upon entering an elevator was followed in by a young woman in her 20s with a marriage certificate in hand. She had been waiting for him in his own resident parking lot and waited till he showed up to corner him in the elevator, demanding that he marry her. After reviewing property cameras, it was later discovered and confirmed by authorities that this wasn't her first time visiting his residence. She had actually visited this man's property several times before. Y'all, this is like a whole thing in South Korea. They have a name for it. It's very well known. I would argue that it sounds like it's just the South Korean equivalent to the American word for stan. The term for these people is sasaengs, which is the South Korean term for dangerously obsessive fans that go out of their way to invade the personal space and privacy of Korean idols. There are stories online of these people stalking, following these celebs' taxis, buying up seats on the planes these celebs are flying on, sending letters penned, written in menstrual blood. Chills. Case number 3. More recently, y'all know what happened between me and the Barbz. After making a video laughing at Nicki Minaj's piss poor diss track towards Meg Thee Stallion, in which I uploaded to TikTok, the Barbz found my phone number, authenticated my number through Cash App to make sure that it was actually like legit me, circulated that information on the internet along with a former address that I used to reside at. If you haven't watched my video for that, you should definitely go check that out. It's the key. But one thing I actually did not mention in that video that I probably feel a little bit more comfortable mentioning now is these bitches actually found my current address. Matter of fact, they had somebody deliver a pizza over here, to which my little brother opened the door. Case number 4. This is probably what I would consider the earliest examples of toxic standom. The infamous case of Bjork stalker Ricardo Lopez. A really eerie, scary, unsettling case. In 1996, Lopez's obsession with the Icelandic singer turned dark after he learned she was in a relationship with musician Goldie. His anger, fueled by racial animosity, he was sick as fuck over this lady being in a relationship with a black man. I think he's biracial. I gotta look, but he was sick as fuck over that. His anger, fueled by racial animosity and feelings of betrayal, led him to plot this perverted, depraved act of revenge. He meticulously documented his descent into madness through a video diary. Initially, he intended to construct a bomb filled with needles containing HIV-positive blood, but after realizing how difficult it was to put it together, he just settled on constructing a letter bomb filled with sulfuric acid that he planned to send to Bjork. No words. I mean, what do you... Now, as much as these examples illustrate just how toxic and dangerous stands and stand-ups can get, it doesn't necessarily give us a well-rounded understanding of the psychology, what experienced professionals, academics, researchers, mental health professionals have to say on the matter of stands. In the next part of this video, let's go through what experts have identified as key patterns of this phenomena and how they assess these parasocial behaviors. To understand why stands are the way they are, we must take a look at the research. And one of the most notable frameworks for studying and understanding celebrity worship is the Celebrity Worship Scale that was introduced in 2002 by a group of researchers. This scale measures the intensity of an individual's obsession with celebrities and has been universally applied across various demographics. The scale identifies 3 stages of celebrity worship. 1. Low worship. At this stage, individuals engage in basic activities like watching or reading about celebrities purely for entertainment. 2. Intermediate worship. Here, the obsession takes on a more social character, with individuals engaging others with shared interests, participating in conversations and fan communities centered around the celebrity. And number 3, high worship. In the most extreme cases, individuals develop and exhibit intense, deep emotional connections to the celebrity, often obsessively following every detail of their lives. They may even over-identify with the celebrity's successes and failures as if they were personally affected by them. Now, that is a very straightforward, basic understanding of celebrity worship broken down into tiers, right? But as the research evolved, so did the scale. Thus, it ended up becoming known as the Celebrity Attitude Scale. This became the standard and benchmark for how researchers assessed attitudes towards celebrities across 3 distinct yet interconnected levels. And I'm gonna list them. 1, entertainment social, viewing the celebrity as a source of entertainment and social interaction. 2, intense personal, developing intense emotional investment, often obsessive feelings towards the celebrity, sometimes to the point of viewing them as a soulmate. And number 3, borderline pathological, exhibiting extreme and potentially harmful behaviors related to the celebrity, where fans may engage in stalking or even committing illegal acts in the name of their idol. If there's anything you leave with from this section, it's what I'm about to emphasize, okay? The updated version of the scale revealed that the previously categorized levels of celebrity worship are not isolated categories, but actually exist on a continuum. It's not just a matter of somebody falling into low, intermediate, high categories of worship. These levels overlap and influence one another in a way that often leads to compulsive behaviors. At any point, someone can go from low to high, from entertainment social to borderline pathological. As a content creator, as someone who's been observing and engaging with these internet subcultures, I can attest to the truth of these assessments and the research. The collective attitudes and the lengths to which stands are willing to go are shaped by a mix of peer pressure and personal identification with the celebrity they idolize. Age plays a very important and crucial role here, especially with Gen Z having this unique and very skewed relationship with the internet. These younger fans, stans, whatever you want to call them, they are more susceptible to peer influence and often adopt the most aggressive forms of groupthink. This environment fosters deep obsession and at its worst, may lead to harassment. Research findings consistently reveal that folk who typically score high on the celebrity worship scale often exhibit a number of psychosocial characteristics. These include concerns about body image, particularly in young adolescents, a higher likelihood of seeking cosmetic surgery, and a personality style marked by sensation-seeking, cognitive rigidity, and poor interpersonal boundaries. Additionally, these individuals may display dissociative traits, stalking behavior, and compulsive buying habits. One very concerning find was the link between high levels of celebrity worship and poor mental health outcomes, including clinical depression, anxiety, social dysfunction. Furthermore, according to other studies, there's a connection between narcissism and celebrity worship. A study involving 343 adults from the US and UK used the narcissistic personality inventory alongside the celebrity attitude scale to examine this relationship. The results were very telling. 4 out of 5 measures of narcissism were positively correlated with at least one aspect of celebrity worship. This suggests that people who worship celebrities often display narcissistic traits themselves, such as a need for admiration and a sense of superiority. It's a very fascinating insight into how the act of standing for some may be driven by, a deeper psychological need, right? Particularly like for social validation and the projection of an idealized self through the celebrity figure. As you may be able to tell, the psychology of standing is very complex. It's a mixture of personal, social, cultural factors. It's also deeply intertwined with some folks' own psychological needs and how they navigate their identities in a connected, hyper-digitized world. The researchers I've mentioned are key figures in the academic exploration of celebrity worship. Their body of work spans across dozens of studies, often in collaboration to uncover the complex relationship and dynamic between celebrity worship, personality, social behavior, mental health. Their research has been cited not only in academic spaces, but also by some of y'all faves on here, and it continues to influence our modern understanding of Standom, stan culture, and celebrity worship. So, should you find any issue with anything I just said in this video, don't beef with me, beef with the data. Now, you might be wondering, Eric, in what ways have you seen this sort of behavior, social behavior phenomena manifest in insidious ways in our current digitized space today? This brings us to the next portion of the video, characteristics of Standom. We are about to dive into these subcultural attitudes bred on what I believe to be the HQ for celebrity Standom, Twitter. This is the criteria I use to identify, assess, and understand stands. One of the defining aspects of this subculture is the communal, almost familial bond that fans form with each other, right? Take Nicki Minaj's fan base, for instance. Many queer stans find solace in her music and expression, creating a sense of community that often fills a void left by neglect or marginalization. This digital camaraderie becomes a vital source of connection. Interestingly, one thing I would like to see represented more intentionally in the data around celebrity worship is young queer folks' affinity for celebrities, specifically young gay men. In particular, queer social culture is heavily informed and influenced by popular culture, or it could really be the inverse. It's a very symbiotic relationship. You know, for many queer folk, especially the young gays, Standom functions as a substitute for a community, for a family, because that's not a luxury widely or easily accessible to some in traditional social settings. In some queer circles, you'll hear the girls talk about chosen families. For some folk, their chosen families are their internet peers. The Barbz that they be coalition building with to harass. These are the girls they be grassroots streaming alongside and riding in the streets just to get Miss Minaj to the top spot on the billboard. But on a more serious note, such research, intentional research, would help us enhance our understandings on the psychological complexities related to celebrity worship in specific to this demographic. I think it would be very, very, very insightful. Number 2, groupthink. Groupthink is another prevalent feature of Standom, where critical thought is often sacrificed for the sake of unity. Within these circles, expressing impartial views or critical opinions about the object of admiration can lead to ostracization or outright hostility. Peer pressure plays a significant role here as fans feed off each other's behavior, creating an environment where conformity is not just encouraged, it's expected. This is why I wholeheartedly agree with the assessment that celebrity worship exists on a continuum, because when you factor in something like peer pressure, at a moment's notice, these stands, social behaviors can become increasingly volatile, can become increasingly more risky. They function as a hive mind of sorts, running off one singular brain cell, getting together on Discord servers and iMessage group chats to mass organize and manipulate streaming numbers, fabricate screenshots, mass organize to participate and coordinate smear campaigns against randoms who don't speak too favorably on their idols. This action, this collective action, is a hallmark of modern Standom. Number 3, driven by luxury, aesthetics, relatability, personality, lifestyle. Stands often adopt and integrate traits of celebrities they idolize into their own expression. That is a given. But there's something I came across recently that I found very, very, very interesting. Dr. Alfie Brelin-Noble, an internationally recognized scientist, author, media personality, and speaker, notes that social distancing and isolation during the height of COVID-19 pandemic created the perfect storm for these behaviors to thrive as users sought more connection online. As people sought more connection online, many turned to the glamorous lives of celebrities as a distraction from their own challenges. The relatability aspect is further exacerbated when shared marginalization such as race, gender, or sexual orientation come into play. Now listen to this. Representational politics further strengthens and emboldens this false sense of connectedness, making the stand's attachment to celebrity feel even more personal. I need you to bookmark that last point for when we get into talking about how this relates to Kamala. Is it Kamala? 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 Am I... Y'all, let me...
While I say this, baby, and I'm gonna hold your hand while I say this. It is Kamala. What are y'all calling this woman? Kamala. Kamala. Kamala.
Oh my God. I swear I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. Kamala. It ain't that hard. I'll try to fix it. Kamala. And my last point, number 4, digital blackface and misogynoir. On Twitter, especially across all standoms, there is usually a cohort of stans that are participating in digital blackface. They are hiding behind these stan accounts with these celebrity PFPs shielded by anonymity, co-opting Black American vernacular slang and lingo, using all kinds of slurs, N-word this, N-word that, whilst also participating in the most violent forms of misogynoir. They love to speak on the girls, whether it be Meg, whether it be Chloe Bailey, whether it be Normani. If you've been on Twitter, you know what I'm talking about. These people view these artists as mules, just objects for their pleasure and consumption, with no regard for these folk being artists in their own right and having control of their creative direction, how they, you know, release these projects and how they want to express their art form to the greater public. Now, I could further delve into more personal observations and characteristics I've picked up in the last 4 years I've been online, but I want to pivot to the next part of the video where we talk about Kamala and the implications of stan culture, memification making its way into internet political discourse. And in order to situate this conversation, we're going to have to take it back to 2019 with the rise and development of Kamala's stan base. A fan base that coalesced around Kamala Harris and grew in number during her unsuccessful run to secure the Democratic nomination for president. Much like the fan bases of pop stars, Kive emerged as a group of ardent supporters who were quick to defend Harris against criticism, often with the same intensity and fervor seen in entertainment standoms. It was sort of a response to what many saw as unfair attacks and double standards that Harris faced as a woman of color in a predominantly white male political landscape. Kive adopted similar stand-up tactics, mobilizing on social media, using memes to spread their message and creating an air of protection around Harris. After Kamala forgoed her bid for the 2020 Democratic nomination, the branding of Harris didn't stop. In fact, I would actually say once she was confirmed to be Biden's VP pick, her team was dead set on priming the socio-political landscape for a future presidential bid, and they were very successful at it. The groundwork was being laid with a clear focus on representational politics. Black, South Asian, a woman. Years later, we're now seeing this strategy work in her camp's favor, given how she's currently being engaged online. You don't believe me? You think I'm doing too much? In a Buzzfeed article written by Ryan Brooks writes, Kive members strategized in group chats, created hashtags to promote campaign videos, and passed along ideas to the campaign. Matter of fact, user NotCapAmerica, which y'all have probably seen on Twitter, goes by the name Evan. A prominent member of Kive went on record with this journalist, revealing that early on in 2019, he'd receive deep-cut clips of Harris speeches or hashtag suggestions directly from campaign aides. He would attend Harris events and be brought backstage to meet her with members of her team saying, "We talk about you in the office all the time, and her husband loves you." This has been years in the making. A calculated effort to not just build a political brand, but to cultivate a loyal base to assist them in their efforts to capitalize on a state of crisis that we experience every 4 years, holding folk at political gunpoint, fear-mongering about threats to a democracy. And while this may seem like savvy political strategy to counteract the fascist attitudes happening on the other side of the political aisle, this raises concerns for me around the future of political engagement. When the line between fan and voter blurs, we risk losing the ability to critically evaluate and make necessary demands of our leaders. Let me put this into perspective for y'all. Over the last 4 years, we have witnessed events that have completely shattered and altered our psyche. A global pandemic, the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and however many more. The insurrection on January 6th, the Buffalo 2022 mass shooting, the Uvalde 2022 mass shooting, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the humanitarian crises happening in Haiti, Congo, Palestine, Sudan, and many other occupied territories, more alarming Supreme Court rulings, and now Sonia Massey. I know there's probably so much more that I left out, but the point is, we are scared, we're unsure, we are fearful of what a Trump presidency could look like. We are horrified about what these people are planning and putting pen to paper as it pertains to Project 2025. It has sent so many of us into fight or flight, with many of us feeling overstimulated, dysregulated, feeling unsure of what the future holds and in search of answers. And every bit of anxiety you're feeling is the intended function of a system firmly rooted and planted in white supremacy. To capitalize on the dysfunction, to distract you, to overwhelm your mental and emotional state. They've kept us in a constant state of crisis, cornering folk into desperation, priming folk to throw their full weight behind bare minimum politicians without any critical thought and chastising others who don't fall in line. And now this very same system at this moment is trying to convince the most marginalized of us to lazily put our trust in it by appealing to our desire for representation and empowerment. Now this leads me to my next point. In her own video titled The Anatomy of Stan Culture, which chef's kiss, intellectual media, timeless video, still has applications to today's climate. But yes, in her own video, The Anatomy of Stan Culture, intellectual media brings up two salient perspectives that I'd like to point out here. Number one, she references John Fisk's semiotic productivity and how people use celebs to construct their own identity or enhance it as a form of empowerment. I do believe that this is partly what is happening with Kamala Harris and why people are espousing and weaponizing representational politics in her defense, and partly why she was able to fundraise $81 million in one single day in 24 hours without a promise or a platform to the people. Given what we went through and witnessed the last 4 years, the empty promises, the rescinding of all these DEI initiatives and programs that were put in place in a post-George Floyd era, one in which they low-key kind of made us feel complicit in capitalizing off of this man's death by pouring so much money into small black-owned businesses, creating these positions in DEI just to repeal and ban them in all these southern states. But yeah, given what we've witnessed the last 4 years, cop cities popping up.
Really quickly, I want to clarify the point I brought up about DEI initiatives and cop cities. I'm aware that these are largely state-level issues in which the president has limited direct authority to intervene, but I bring this up to establish that our climate has increasingly gotten worse, and as constituents, we have been failed at every level, state and federal. What we see happening in southern states in tandem with Supreme Court rulings, how the political landscape has gotten increasingly fringe-like and conservative with measly attempts at pushback from Democrats, that should be reason enough to apply pressure and demand more of our elected officials, whether governor, president, etc.
Sister has not earned our vote by any means, yet we are giving it to her, affording her our unwavering support with no compromise, with no action plan, with no demands, without push, without critique. Some folk just giving it to her off the basis of her being black and a South Asian woman. Now that point leads me to my second. Intellectual media also posits that Stan culture can be further theorized as a facet of neoliberalism because neolibs make no room for structural, institutional inequalities or conversations about privilege. And we can see clear as day how these attitudes have made their way into today's political discourse.
Y'all, I fully thought I was a leftist until this week. Turns out I am not. I am a Democrat. And I will be giving you guys my leftist card back because I don't really want it. Hot take, but I love America. It's really hard for me to justify that I'm not voting for Kamala Harris because she didn't handle Israel perfectly. Yeah, this situation sucks. And newsflash, not every politician is fucking perfect. But gas mask must go on my country.
Wait, before I do this, say Kamala for president. Kamala for president. No, Kamala for president.
I need the help.
Okay, we need the help. We need to win this election. So wait a second. You help us, we will help you. Listen, if you can give me a Kamala for president, we will send you gifts.
Thank you.
Oh, now you're going to get your help. You think that's going to happen? You think that's going to happen?
Thank you. I love you.
I got something for your ass. USA, not on my American TikTok. What you mean? We need help here. So if you're not getting up and you're not promoting Kamala winning and influencing the people, get off my fucking live.
This has led to a lot of infighting between folk living in the U.S. imperial core, often unwilling participants in this system, against people who are living outside of our U.S. borders and impacted by the U.S.'s efforts and actions to destabilize their countries, their territories.
To the point about nationalistic rhetoric, take for example Kamala's response to pro-Palestinian protesters in Michigan. Y'all, the American nationalism I saw jump out in response to Kamala shutting these folk down for protesting an active genocide shook me to my core, to say the least. All of a sudden, I'm seeing comments reading, "I'm sick of these watermelon people. Y'all want us to give up our rights." I mean, it was vitriolic, hateful, ignorant language, absent of intellect. And you could tell these folk were just talking just to talk. And that ultimately is what confirmed my fears around the mindless engagement of politics currently. In what world has it ever been appropriate to hold our current administration and the candidate currently running for president accountable for an active genocide? Kamala is not your auntie, sister, mother. She's an elected official, and we are her constituents. And to see bad actors online employing Kamala's relatability and representational politics to further drive a wedge between a long-standing alliance between Palestinians and Black Americans, it just further illustrated for me that this hive mind Standom mess isn't just some harmless internet quirk. It compromises folks' judgment and decision-making. And had it not been for the public outcry from folk exercising some level of sensibility and calling out the insensitivity in her response, we probably wouldn't have gotten the more respectful engagement we later saw between Kamala and protesters in Arizona.
This is really unfortunate because the real enemy here, what we should be mad at, what we should be organizing to disrupt, are these systems that perpetuate inequality and dysfunction. We should be mad that every 4 years, every election cycle, we're having to choose between the lesser of two evils. We should be mad that the chaos our country wreaks abroad using our tax dollars is viewed as nothing more than foreign policy. We should be mad that things have gotten so unserious in American electoral politics that people are now standing politicians. In this context, the Stanification of Kamala Harris isn't just about politics. It's about how digital culture has completely transformed the way we engage politics. It's a phenomenon that blurs the lines between political loyalty and the kind of obsessive devotion that we see happening with these fandoms, these standoms, and their idols, their celebrity worship. As we navigate this new terrain, it is crucial for folk to understand and recognize the power and the danger of standom, especially when it enters the political sphere. It is a dangerous mindset that requires folk to forego their critical thought, dispose of folk who criticize and make demands of their representatives, and to also shield these agents of the state who are complicit in marginalized folks' oppression. Understanding the psychology of standoms isn't just about recognizing these patterns, it's about understanding the broader implications of these patterns on our culture and interactions with politicians like Kamala Harris.
For the sake of nuance and having a good, well-rounded discussion, I do want to acknowledge that this conversation around Kamala and how she's come to be the Democratic choice for this electoral season is much more nuanced and complicated, and it can't be just solely attributed to stan culture. But I would be remiss if I didn't emphasize how much of a huge part it's played in current political discourse and in creating hype around Kamala. Because some folk don't have the context and aren't attuned to the inner workings of PR, messaging, and how much science and psychology goes into how the general public engages and internalizes this sort of messaging subconsciously. And I'm speaking as someone with a communications degree whose field of study allows me to suss out how these campaigns are being orchestrated.
As we near the end of this video, I want to reiterate that this is not me telling you how to vote, who to vote for. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to talk about whether or not I'm voting, who I'd be voting for, because I don't think that's necessarily useful for this conversation. I don't think that's what the focus should be. And to be quite frank, I don't feel as though we as a community, as a collective, Black folk, I don't think we are at a place where we possess the collective class and race consciousness to have these conversations in a meaningful, tactful, effective way. But to that last point, Ultimately, that is the goal of my content, of this video specifically, and of any video I make moving forward. Raising consciousness, urging folk to think and engage more critically with the world around them. Tap into the needs and perspectives of the folk alongside you, of the folk around you. Do not be swayed so easily. Make sure we're thinking, questioning, holding ourselves, holding our leaders accountable, demanding more of our leaders, pressuring them. Because if we're going to be forced to participate in systems that were never designed to accommodate us in the first place, you better raise hell. How many of us are prioritizing building and creating networks of care in our own communities? In the places our government and leadership fails, where and how do we ensure that there are sustainable systems in place to care for the most marginalized in our pursuit of liberation? Because I hear people throwing around the phrase harm reduction, voting is harm reduction. Are you actually familiar with that framework? Do you know what Narcan is? Have you cared for an injection drug user? What mutual aid, food sovereignty, housing initiatives are you aware of in your community? The conversation cannot begin and end at voting. Anyways, girl, I hope this video wasn't too long. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching and listening and engaging in good faith. I can't wait to see the comments. I am so sorry for having gone so long. I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, watching over your loved ones, in community, tending to the needs of yourselves and those around you. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next video.